Yo, a 31-year-old influencer just got engaged on her dream birthday vacation, and 72 hours later, she was dead, a belt around her neck, an unidentified mark they can't explain, and a fiancé who waited 11 hours to pick up the phone and call her family. This was supposed to be the happiest week of ASHLEE JENAE's entire life. Paradise, a proposal, a whole new chapter. Instead, somebody's gonna spend the rest of their life answering for what went down in that villa. And Joe McCann really thought flying back to America like nothing happened was gonna save him? Brew, before we get into it, like, subscribe, don't miss it, now. Ashley Robinson, known to millions of y'all as ASHLEE JENAE, was found unresponsive inside a villa closet at a luxury Zanzibar resort, a belt around her neck, on a birthday trip that had just turned into an engagement trip with her fiancé Joseph Isaac McCann. This went down in early October on the island of Zanzibar, Tanzania, after hotel staff had literally separated the couple into two different villas following a dispute the night before. Joe really thought a 10-minute walk was gonna make this whole situation disappear. Bro clearly didn't think this through. Now let's look at the receipts that show why none of this story is adding up. Okay, let's get into the actual words people said, because this is where the story starts cracking wide open. Ashley's parents looked straight into the camera and said, and I'm quoting them directly, "It's under investigation, and we don't know what went on. It's under investigation, and like we said, we just want transparency." When I heard that from her own mother, yo, that's not a grieving family saying we accept a suicide ruling. That's a family saying we do not believe what we're being told. Second receipt. Ashley's father, Harry Robinson, told TMZ point-blank that Joe McCann only got in contact with the family 11 hours after Jenae was taken to a hospital, and the dad called it really strange. 11 hours? Bro said what? Nah, that's the kind of flex that only makes sense if you're stalling for time. Who sits on news that your fiancé is fighting for her life in a Tanzanian hospital for 11 hours? That's the dumbest decision I've ever heard. You can't do that and expect nobody to notice. Third receipt. Zanzibar police officially confirmed in a news conference the couple had, and I quote the official report, a serious dispute the night before her death. So serious that staff had to step in and separate them into two different rooms, and according to some reports, they were concerned about her safety. Concerned about her safety. That's not me saying that. That's the hotel staff. When I read that, I had to do a double take. Is he serious? Fourth receipt. The last staff interaction before Ashley was found unresponsive, according to the police statement reported by CBS and Fox, she asked for a phone charger and told the staff member to come back in about 15 minutes. 15 minutes. When that attendant came back, the door was locked, the lights were off, and a master key had to be used to get inside. When I read that timeline, I rewound and read it 3 times. That's not somebody who was in distress 15 minutes earlier. That's somebody making a normal, casual request. Fifth receipt, and this one's a kicker. A second medical report that leaked, reported by Instagram circulated autopsy documents and confirmed by TMZ's timeline breakdown, lists her cause of death as cerebral hypoxia due to strangulation and suffocation, along with an unidentified mark around her neck. Strangulation. Not hanging. Not self-inflicted. Strangulation. Nah, you can't give me a suicide ruling and a strangulation autopsy in the same case and expect me to take either one seriously. That line right there, that's where the official story lost the plot. Now that we got the quotes on the table, let's connect the dots. Here's what you are missing when you just look at this as one tragic night. This story didn't start on that birthday trip. This story started a year before any of us ever heard Joe McCann's name, in a crime context. That 78% fund loss dropped in July 2025, meaning by the time the Zanzibar trip happened, McCann's asymmetric liquid fund had just been publicly shuttered after catastrophic losses, and he was already scrambling to raise $1.5 billion for a new Solana Treasury venture to save face. So we're talking about a man who went into this vacation carrying the weight of burnt investors, a public reputation in freefall, and a desperate need to pivot the narrative. That's not a relaxed getaway energy. That's pressure cooker energy. That proposal happened mid-vacation, days before her death, meaning the man who had just lost 78% of his fund's value was locking down a public engagement with a famous influencer in the middle of his worst professional year. Bro, that's terrible timing. Any smart person would have waited. But McCann isn't playing the long game here. The dispute happened specifically on day 4 of the trip, after hotel staff reportedly logged multiple escalating exchanges. Not one argument, multiple. This wasn't a boiling point. This was a pattern. And at a luxury Zanzibar resort where privacy is literally the brand, for staff to physically intervene and move a guest 10 minutes away, that's a threshold most hotels never hit. So McCann did whatever he did 3 or 4 times in a row in front of hotel workers. That's a move of someone who doesn't have real advisors. The hospital run happened in isolation, because by that point the couple had been physically separated, meaning there's an entire window where nobody except Joe and ASHLEE knows the real sequence. The staff last saw her alive and responsive, asking for a phone charger. 15 minutes later, closet, belt, unresponsive. That's when you know the timeline doesn't have room for spontaneous suicide. You literally can't rig that setup in 15 minutes while also being separated from your partner unless somebody else entered that room. And that GoFundMe? The one ASHLEE's father, Harry Robinson, had to launch publicly to bring his daughter's body home from Tanzania. That launch while McCann, a man with a net worth reportedly in the tens of millions from his crypto career, offered the family nothing. That's not grief. That's distance. That's a man who moved on from his fiancé the second the plane landed back in the U.S. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Now check this out. Nobody's talking about the specific word choices in that suicide narrative, and they should be. Zoom into the phrase confined space. Part, they told you she was found in a closet. But forensically, a closet is a narrow, vertical, cramped environment. You don't rig a bell to yourself in a luxury villa closet in 15 minutes while the door is locked from the inside and the lights off. You know what turning the lights off adds? Nothing. For suicide. But it adds everything if you're trying to delay discovery. That one detail, lights off, is a staging choice, not a dispatch choice. And McCann really didn't catch that? That's embarrassing. Now zoom into the phrase unidentified mark. Think about what that word means forensically. A hanging produces a specific, predictable mark, an inverted V pattern, angled upward, consistent with suspension. The fact that Tanzanian authorities wrote unidentified means a mark they saw did not match what a belt hanging produces. It was something else. Something horizontal. Something that looks like hands or a ligature plied from behind. That's a word that's gonna sink this whole suicide story, and McCann's team apparently hasn't figured that out yet. Zoom into the 15-minute interval. In forensic analysis, intervals between last contact and discovery are gold. 15 minutes isn't enough time to make peace with ending your life if you were just asking for a phone charger like it was any regular Tuesday. That's not the behavior of a person in crisis. That's the behavior of a person who expected to be alive 15 minutes later. If McCann had half a brain, he would have known investigators would notice this before putting his name on a suicide statement. Zoom into one more pattern, the 11-hour communication delay. That's not grief shock. Grief shock calls a family in 11 minutes, not 11 hours. 11 hours is the exact window you'd need to coordinate a local attorney, align your story with witnesses, and make sure the Tanzanian paperwork read suicide before anybody in the States had time to push back. That's not a trauma response. That's a containment strategy. And that's the problem with McCann. He thinks we can't read between the lines. Last pattern, the financial one. 78% loss in July 2025. Engagement in October. Vacation same week. Her dad launching a GoFundMe for her body while a man of McCann's net worth stays silent. Y'all, people don't propose during their worst professional year unless they need the optics. They don't stay silent on a $50,000 funeral fund unless staying quiet is cheaper than explaining. Every single piece of this forensic pattern says strategy, not tragedy. Now let's see how the media covered this. Here's where it gets wild. Because every major outlet is framing this story differently, and the gap between their angles tells you everything about who's protecting who. Fortune framed this as a financial downfall story, positioning McCann primarily as a high-flying crypto trader held in Tanzania, putting his fund history front and center and treating ASHLEE almost as context. That framing makes the case look like a rich guy in trouble piece, not a woman found dead piece. Convenient angle for a business publication with a Wall Street readership. CBS News framed it completely differently, leading with American influencer dies under mysterious circumstances, centering ASHLEE and making McCann's attention the back half of the story. Same facts, totally different center of gravity. That's not an accident, that's editorial calculation. Then People magazine went soft, framing it almost as a vacation tragedy, leaning into the fiancé and influencer romance angle before pivoting to the investigation. That framing is designed for sympathy, not scrutiny, and anybody defending McCann is grabbing that article first. And then you got the counter-narrative swirling on Instagram and Facebook. People saying you don't know the facts. She could have been dealing with a long illness, trying to plant reasonable doubt in the comments. Some of McCann's defenders are trying to spin this. These are the same people who defend any rich guy who ended up in a situation like this. The receipts, the 11-hour silence, the strangulation autopsy, the staff separation, the 78% fund collapse. Those receipts don't lie no matter what Instagram comment section you live in. And here's the cleanest proof the media is split. The Global News Canada headline literally framed it as U.S. tourist held in Zanzibar after his fiancé dies following arguments, putting the argument and the detention in the same sentence. That one headline says more than 3 soft U.S. articles combined. The outlets that aren't tied to American finance money are telling the real story. But here's what nobody is saying. The mainstream narrative wants you to believe this is a tragic mental health story, that a successful influencer snapped during a dream vacation, that Joe McCann is a grieving fiancé who's cooperating with authorities, that the 11-hour delay is just shock, that the suicide ruling is preliminary and we should all wait. Here's what they won't tell you. This isn't a crime case. This is an accountability case being buried under crypto money and American privilege. And the ONLY reason Joe McCann is even being questioned right now is because this happened in Tanzania, not in the United States. Think about it. If this exact same incident happened in Miami, in LA, in New York, with a millionaire white crypto fund manager and a black female influencer, bro would have flown back home, hired a PR firm, dropped a statement through his lawyer, and the story would have died in 48 hours. Every single mechanism of American celebrity protection would have kicked in. The outlets would have printed tragic suicide. The social media would have moved on, and Harry Robinson would be crying into a GoFundMe with nobody listening. But it happened in Zanzibar. And Tanzania doesn't care about your American crypto money. Tanzania doesn't care about your asymmetric liquid fund or your Solana treasury pitch. Tanzania sees that man's passport and said, "You're not going anywhere until we're done." McCann is a puppet who's used to pulling strings, and for the first time in his life, the strings don't reach. And here's a layer deeper. That 78% fund loss I talked about, that wasn't just embarrassing. That was destabilizing. When a hedge fund manager loses 78% of client money, investors want answers, investors want arbitration, investors want blood. Some of ASHLEE's own money may have been in that fund. That YouTube coverage asking, was the argument over money she had invested that he lost too? Isn't a wild theory. It's a legitimate industry question nobody in finance media want to touch. So you got a man under financial pressure, publicly engaged to a famous influencer for optics, traveling alone to a country where she becomes isolated, where no U.S. prosecutor has jurisdiction, where local authorities can be navigated with enough money. That's not a coincidence trip. That's what psychological warfare looks like when it's dressed up as a vacation. Every move McCann made was predictable from a strategic standpoint, and that's a problem. You can't out-strategize a lockdown Tanzanian investigation with TikTok silence. And here's the part that's gonna piss people off. The hip-hop and urban media community picked this story up first. Mainstream finance press waited a week before Fortune even published. Why? Because ASHLEE JENAE was a black woman influencer, and if the black internet hadn't carried this story for 7 straight days on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, you wouldn't even know her name right now. McCann's whole strategy was betting that nobody would care loud enough. He bet on the wrong side of history. The forbidden take is this. The suicide story was never meant for ASHLEE's family. It was meant for American headlines. It was meant to get filed, forgotten, and buried under the next celebrity cycle. But McCann picked the worst country on earth to try that playbook in. And that's the truth they won't tell you. So what happens next? Here's what's most likely to happen. And mark my words, write this date down. Scenario 1. McCann is going to spend a lot of time in Tanzania. He's not coming home soon. His passport's already seized, and the moment that second autopsy, the one listing cerebral hypoxia due to strangulation and suffocation, gets officially released by Tanzanian authorities, the suicide ruling flips to a homicide inquiry. And once it flips, he's not getting bail, he's not getting a plane ticket, and is definitely not getting a U.S. attorney to represent him in a Zanzibar courtroom. He's gonna have to hire a local attorney he can't vet, in a language he doesn't speak, in a legal system he can't manipulate with money. He's gonna look desperate trying to navigate a system that doesn't care who he is. The silence is giving ASHLEE's family right now. That same silence is about to become a prison wall. Scenario 2. Now, if somehow he does make it back to U.S. soil, and that's a big if, the civil side of this is gonna destroy him anyway. Harry Robinson and that family are not letting this go. You don't launch a public GoFundMe for your daughter's body and then quietly accept a suicide ruling. A wrongful death civil suit is coming, and in civil court the burden of proof is way lower. McCann is not ready for what's coming if ASHLEE's family takes this to trial with the autopsy discrepancy, the 11-hour delay, the staff separation reports, and the fund-loss financial motive all on the record. We saw what juries do with wealthy defendants in suspicious death cases. McCann doesn't stand a chance in front of 12 people who don't care about his crypto resume. Scenario 3. Looking at the bigger picture, this case is about to become a cultural reckoning for the entire influencer meets finance bro pipeline. For years, we've watched black female creators get paired up with white finance money, and the industry treated it like romance. After ASHLEE JENAE, that pipeline is cooked. The culture isn't gonna let this one go quietly. This is gonna be the moment everybody remembers as when the soft life with the crypto guy fantasy officially died. 5 years from now, people are gonna look back at October 2025 as a case that forced finance Twitter and influencer culture to confront what it actually looks like when things go wrong in paradise. And the legacy piece? ASHLEE JENAE's name is about to carry further than it ever did when she was alive. Harry Robinson's fight is going to reshape how the State Department handles American deaths abroad. The embassy in Tanzania is already under pressure, and that pressure isn't going anywhere. Meanwhile, McCann is watching the culture move on without him, watching his name become a warning label for every black woman in the creator economy, and there's nothing he can do about it. Whatever happens, criminal trial in Zanzibar, civil trial in the U.S., or even some kind of settlement, one thing's clear. Joe McCann already lost. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say. Ring that bell for notifications.